Welcome everyone to Kagyu Samyusang Edinburgh for the second session in this series of presentations of teachings of Akong Rinpoche, which we call Living the Legacy, because it's the way that we can remember Rinpoche, but not only remember him, but what's so important is to remember his teachings, the very rich legacy that he left us. So before we start, we'll say the refuge prayer. And we'll say it once in English, and then once in the phonetics. No, sorry, twice in the Tibetan phonetics. So we start with the refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the noblest Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Through the virtue generated by the practice of generosity and other virtues, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Sanje cha suji chonam la chanchu badu dani chapsunji dagi jin suji pe sonam ji dola penche sanje de parasho sanje chatan suji chonam la chanchu badu dani chapsunji dagi jin suji pe sonam ji dola penche sanje de parasho. May all beings be happy and create the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and from creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness that can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal, impartial compassion, free of bias to friends or enemies. Sem chen tam che dewa tang dewi jutan dempa juchik dunya tang dunya chi jutan trawa juchik dunya mipi dewa tampa tang min dawa juchik Yiring chadan tang chalwe tang yom chempula nepa jurchi. Palden sawe lama Rinpoche, dagi chiwo pende dishukla, katrin chempo gone je sungte, kusung tuchi ngudup sautu sol. Okay, so we can put the prayers away for now, and let's begin by, well, first of all, I'll just explain. So last session, that was the first one, so this is the second one, and the subject for this, in fact it's a chapter, and it's called Kindness as a Way of Life. So there's also a very meaningful quote by Rinpoche as a sort of subheading for this chapter, and I think it's extremely profound and important, so I'll read that first. Whatever obstacles arise, if you deal with them through kindness, without trying to escape, then you have real freedom. And that bears a lot of investigation. It's not immediately understandable. Those are words that you don't often see in the same sentence. So I think it's really a very, very good topic for meditation and contemplation. But we'll get to it, we'll come back to it. So, I'll first read the opening couple of paragraphs. The Buddha's teaching is for every individual, each individual. He said that each of us should practice loving kindness, compassion, and tolerance. When we have loving kindness and we are compassionate and tolerant, then we are helping others. What he's saying, drawing attention to here, is that if you have those qualities, if you develop those qualities, you're automatically helping others because your actions will be based on how you are. So it's not like you have to then think, and now I must do something. This will automatically happen. Of course, you still have to formulate what exactly you might be doing, but whatever you do will be good because you've planted the good seeds of loving kindness, tolerance, and compassion. Suppose the teachings said you do not need loving kindness or compassion. It's other people's job to have loving kindness and compassion. They let them do it. In that case, the world could not be free of suffering. There would be no way that the world could be free of suffering. But the truth is that each of us has a responsibility, and I've underlined the word responsibility, because so often we just think, oh, it'll happen, there's some good people or whatever, we don't always take responsibility. So we have to take responsibility for what we do. And this is also very, very much uppermost in when you're thinking about karma. Karma is not accidental. Karma is unerring. The actions and the result of the actions are unerring. They're unmistaken. Therefore, you need to take responsibility for your actions, because then you can control what the results will be. So if your actions are positive, they will have positive results. If they're negative, they will have negative results. That's putting it extremely simply, but that's, in a nutshell, what it is. So here he's sort of stressing the word, we all have responsibility for what we do. It's not like we don't have it. We do have it, but we need to use it. We need to take responsibility. So if I'm free from anger and hatred and all the poisons, the mind poisons, as we call them, I am acting for the benefit of all beings. If I'm free of those afflictions, then automatically the actions will be good, and therefore they will be helpful for all beings. I no longer need to be frightened because I no longer have any anger. If each of us were to be free from anger and hatred and mind poisons, that would be the biggest contribution we could make into the whole world. It's interesting, isn't it, to say that if I'm free from anger and hatred and all the poisons, I'm acting for the benefit of all beings, because I'm no need to be frightened anymore, because I no longer have the anger. So he's putting together anger and fear. Whether fear arises out of anger or anger arises out of fear is for you to contemplate. What do you reckon? I mean, you can see, for example, if you take it on a child, maybe when they're frightened, or not only a child, but I'm just using a child as an example, when they're frightened, might lash out. And then if you take that to be an adult, you find it's often the same kind of response or reaction. Fear, and then it can produce aggression. And if you look at a lot of what motivates people, deep down they might look on the surface big and tough, but you delve a bit deeper and you might find some fear at the bottom of that that's motivating them to act in a very tough way. Something just popped into my head. I remember reading a couple of days ago, it must have been in a newspaper, that a child, or some children of 11 years old, carry knives. And when they were asked about this, it's because they are frightened of being attacked by others with knives. And these are not empty fears. But if you get one person with a knife who's afraid to be attacked, then that one has a knife, there's a lot more likelihood that you're going to get attacked by someone with a knife, because there's more people carrying knives through fear. And the same applies to guns, doesn't it? You look in a country like America, and many people have guns, because of the same thinking. They're afraid. They think it's for defense. I better have a gun in the house because somebody else, they've got guns, so I better have a gun. You know? So all this comes from fear. But then, you know, some people don't like to look as if they are afraid, so they there's all this thing about, you know, looking quite macho and being sort of tough guys, you know? But underneath that is fear. If they were confident, they wouldn't need that. And then if you magnify that, we can look at the arms industry. Same thing, based on fear. Well, I think that's what he's alluding to. That's certainly the way I take it. And that's just the way I take it. But you might have other ideas, or you might think of other examples of how that could be so. And what is the opposite of fear? You know, it's being open. It's love, isn't it? It's loving kindness. So if each of us were to be free from anger and hatred and mind poisons, that would be the biggest contribution we could make to the whole world. It's true, isn't it? If we were all free of that insecurity, that fear, then we would have no need to be so aggressive. And if everybody had that, then you have a more peaceful world, definitely. And we would give that same freedom to all other people, so they too would have no more fear. If it were possible for us to give that freedom, we would be free. That's real freedom. You know? So therefore, we have a responsibility to free ourselves by practicing loving kindness and compassion, cultivating it. It's not like we don't have any. We do have some, but you know, it needs to be nurtured. It needs to be cultivated, like anything, like any quality that we have. You know, we can sort of damp it down or press it, or we can encourage it, make it grow. And then we become free of fear. We become fearless. When we do Tara Puja, we're praying to Tara, who is fearless, and we want to cultivate that fearlessness in ourselves. That's one of the attributes that we want to bring out, that fearlessness, you know, that confidence. And then to be able to wish that same openness and lack of fear for others, so that they would have no more fear, and they would also be free of the obstacles that are caused by the confused way of seeing, the afflictions, the mind poisons, basically. So carrying on, the second paragraph, he says, it is very important that in our worldly lives we say we are kind and compassionate people, and therefore we want to have peace. So we're aligning ourselves with that. You know, we're tuning into that. We're aligning ourselves with that wish to be kind, to be compassionate, and therefore be peaceful. The Dalai Lama, the very first teaching I ever took by the Dalai Lama at Samiling, the first time I went to Samiling, the topic was, inner peace leads to world peace. Without inner peace, there is no chance of world peace. You know, how can a load of angry people produce world peace? It's not going to happen. You know, so we owe it to ourselves and to the world to cultivate this. Therefore, we should take responsibility. And if we all do that, rather than think, oh, someone else will do it, then that's just not going to happen. So don't think, oh, if it's, you know, it's just me, what difference am I going to make? You know, if everyone thinks like that, then there will be no difference. It will just go from bad to worse. So we need to be, you know, cultivate that confidence that if we all do it, that will make a difference. And even if, however many people do it, it will make a difference. Even just one person will make some difference. So it's important that we align ourselves with that and that we want to have peace. Now we are fighting with other countries in order to have peace. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? How is peace going to come from war? It's not going to happen. You might have a stop of fighting for a little while, but then things will erupt again because it's not based on peace in the mind, peaceful natures. It's just a temporary agreement for a short time, a pause in the fighting, and then it bubbles up again and again. And it happens all over the world, and it's constantly going on. You know, even some of the wars we know about, many of them we don't know about, or we don't hear about very much. There's always one or two that take all the headlines, but there's many, many more going on. And it's not going to end while people have no peace in their mind. So many people want to achieve peace, but we do not have to fight to achieve that. And we don't have to tell anybody else what to do. This is one of the main things that happens, isn't it? I know best. You should be doing it like that. And then that person doesn't want to do it like that, and then they rebel, and then you have a bit of a battle and a war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing, as Edwin Starr said. If each of us could wake up to our compassionate nature, if the whole world could do that, then it would be a compassionate world. And here's some advice. If you have a Dharma center that you like, and you like the meditation practice, it is very important that your practice should not be confined only to the shrine room. When you go home, you take that compassion and loving kindness and fearlessness and all the good qualities that you've been engendering, and you apply it at all time. And whatever obstacles arise in your daily life, you deal with them through that kindness without always trying to escape. Because usually what happens when we have obstacles, we try to look the other way, don't we? Let's leave that there, I'm going off and doing something else. We distract ourselves rather than dealing with it with compassion and loving kindness. If we can get out of an awkward situation, we're out the door, metaphorically or physically. But then things always sort of come back to bite us on the bum, you know, because we haven't dealt with it. So when we deal with it, we become more able to deal with it, and we go through it, and that's how we learn, by doing it, by aligning ourselves with this good motivation and then acting it out, you know, and from a place of good motivation. And okay, sometimes it might feel even a bit put on. Oh, I'm not really that good, but I'll try and do it anyway, sort of thing. You know, it feels almost a bit false. But there's the phrase, fake it till you make it. You know, you get good at things the more you do them, isn't it? It's like training. It's training your mind, training your whole being to act in a wiser way, because what you're up against is your old habits. So sometimes, oh, but I'm not like that. Well, you're not like that because you're not trying to be like that. You know, you've been doing something else, and if you didn't want to change, well, why are you coming to teachings? Why, you know, if you're just happy with the way things are right now, there'd be no reason to ever do anything. You just carry on the same old samsara, round and round we go. But if you want to if you come to teachings with the idea of improving how you are, developing the good qualities, and, you know, seeing through the negative stuff, you have to see it to understand it. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to drop what's not useful and cultivate what is helpful. This is the most basic kind of definition of Buddhism, is to adopt what's helpful, drop what's harmful, adopt what's helpful, and fully train the mind. Because without fully training the mind, you don't always know. And you don't always act it out, even if you do know. Sometimes you sort of ignore it. So we really have to have honesty, and then that honesty is freedom. Because who are you trying to fool? Yourself? Others? Thank goodness for Akong Rinpoche. You know, I never ever put on a mask for Akong Rinpoche, because that would have been absolutely pointless. Because he knows me better than I know myself. So I have to be, you know, not worry about that. You know, be compassionate for yourself, you know. You have to be compassionate as well for yourself and others. And then you have real freedom, because you're not living in some sort of trying for this and trying for that. Of course, you're putting effort into it. That's not. I don't mean you shouldn't put effort, but you're being honest with yourself and honest with others, and that way you progress. So his main point in that is to say, apply it in daily life, whatever obstacles arise. And, you know, there's always some big ones, little ones, there's always obstacles. So if you meet, instead of, you know, because very often there's an obstacle, or somebody's having to stop a little bit of an argument or whatever, and we meet it with aggression, whether it's not necessarily physical aggression, but we'll come back at it, isn't it? When somebody says something a bit funny to us, and we'll back, you know, it was he didn't, she didn't, you know, and we meet it in that way, so it doesn't get resolved. But if you meet it with kindness and compassion, it may or may not change the other person, but it sure as hell will change you. And likelihood, it will change the dynamics. You know, at the very least, you could say it might take the wind out of the sails. You know, if somebody's being aggressive to you, and they almost expect you to be aggressive back. But if you're not, if you're kind and you know, show understanding, that will sort of disarm them a bit. You know, and maybe they make them think, maybe not, but there's a better chance than if you meet like with like and you end up in a battle. And of course, it's very easy for me to sit here and say that. but you know, when you're faced with stuff, try to bring it to mind. And sometimes it's just small things, you know, but you see that little seed of, like, you know, impatience is a form of aggression, actually. You know, so if you're ever in a queue and you get a little bit, come on already, you know, you know, that sort of aggression. Not, oh, that poor person, I can see they have difficulty walking, then no wonder it's a bit slower. So, you know, or whatever. You're just not being so. I'm talking to myself here a lot, because I can get quite impatient with waiting around. So yeah, that is definitely a form of minor aggression. But minor things can grow into major things if you don't nip them in the bud. So this is what I mean, that level of kind of watchfulness, mindfulness. It's mindfulness, isn't it? Mindfulness, not just about, there's something called mindfulness, there's a bit like meditation, but mindfulness in your everyday actions, and what you do and how you do it. And yeah. Then we have real freedom, because our outer conduct will mirror our inner state of mind. And so everything will get smoother. And even when things, don't go our way, it's not the end of the world. Because you'll meet that with, okay, well, that's happened and that's happened, so maybe this would work better, or whatever. You're not kind of, why me? Sort of, why does everything always go wrong for me? You're not meeting it with that. You just, things happen. You find ways to deal with it that don't tighten up everything, that are open. Openness is so important. That allows for things to develop, good things to develop. So, then you have real freedom. Sometimes people can get addicted to drugs or alcohol or actions that harm themselves. The cause and result is very different for each individual. I don't think anyone wants to do harmful things deep down. Whatever harm they are doing is a matter of cause and result from their past lives, their karma. So you can bear that in mind. It's not always immediately understandable why people do things, but it could be as a result of a karma from a previous life that you or even the person doing it will have no knowledge of, no direct knowledge of. So, give them that leeway, You don't always understand the reasons why people do stuff, or why you do stuff. But the more you allow for that possibility, then the less judgmental you are, and the more open you are. And the more open you are, the more helpful you are. So, first of all, you need to develop compassion towards them, rather than saying, oh, these stupid people, why are they doing all this harmful stuff? For the majority of people, it's not what they want to do, they just get carried away. It's not because they want to live in that particular way, but they get caught up in it, and then it becomes habitual. So, you need compassion. You must have compassion towards them. If you have compassion towards them, then everything changes. You have more space for movement, something positive to come of it. And anyway, the second thing to know is that it's not wise to try and help others until you yourself are free. If you see someone is taking drugs and you want to help that person, the first day you may help a little, but then you go 10 or 20 times to see that person, maybe you also start to take drugs. It doesn't help that person if you pick up the habit because you're not sufficiently mature yourself. That is why people go on retreats. It looks strange. Tibetan Buddhists say, we must help others, and yet they run away from the world and go into retreat. It looks contradictory, but it isn't. You have to train your mind, and retreat helps with that, definitely helps with that. And when you've trained your mind, then your actions can be of help to others. They will be of help to others, because you'll be coming from a mind that is no longer so confused. He's not saying it's already fully enlightened or anything, but trained. Once you've trained your mind, you can be more helpful to others. You don't have to do anything special. When your mind is trained, whatever you are doing is a help for others. You don't have to add it on, You don't have to think, oh, today I'm going to help other people. This is the day I'm going to help other people. It's some sort of special edition that you have on. Because whatever you say and do will be helpful. The important thing is to practice meditation and not think of helping other people until you are ready. That's not saying you should never, it doesn't mean to say you should never do some little things that can help people if it's within your possibility. What he's saying, for something that's difficult, that is beyond your possibility of being effective, then that you really need to focus more on training your own mind, and then your actions will be more helpful. You don't have to wait until you completely reach Buddhahood. That's not what is meant here, but you do need to start really becoming aware and training your mind, and then you become so much more useful because your motivation is completely changed. So we're really kind of looking at karma here. Karma is, you cannot get away from karma. Karma's everywhere. It's everything, because we're always doing actions. And why do we do actions? Is because of the way our mind is. You don't just do them randomly. So your thinking affects your actions, and so your mind, which is, where the thoughts begin, is what you need to train. And then the actions will automatically follow suit. You don't have to do something on top of that. The actions are a result of where your mind's at. So, in Buddhism, it's always said, even if people do something harmful to you, your responsibility is to still have compassion. Even when somebody might attack you in some way, you should develop kindness even to those people who are beating you up and do so many things, bad things. You should think, maybe it must be my karmic pattern that is the cause of this. May I forgive those people so they will not have bad karma in their future. Now he says that is quite a high compassionate approach. That is not easy. And maybe only a very compassionate person will be able to think that way. It is tough, what he's saying, it's difficult. So normally people may not yet be able to think like this, but you can try to think more positively towards others, rather than having anger or taking revenge. A negative attitude will not be very useful, so at least you can think that, try to be compassionate even when somebody is doing harm. So that's, he's not saying it's easy, it's not easy, but that's the training. And when you have that, you automatically feel more peaceful because you're not meeting it with aggression, which only leads to really bad feelings and sort of more suffering. You're doing something positive, and even if you can't fully do it, at least you're not engaging in more negativity. At least you're not adding to that. So that's already something good. There's a lot of fear and confusion in the world. When we think about how to help people who are frightened, first, try not to frighten them even more. Yeah, because we can be very kind of, not thinking so well. It's very much as if somebody's sitting in the corner and very frightened of the wind blowing outside. And some people say, I'm going to help this person. And then they thrust a hand in theirs asking, what can I do for you? Of course they'll be frightened. It looks to them as if you're going to take them to the mental institution. One should have gentle kindness and be humble and act in a very simple way. And I can think of no better example than Akong Rinpoche, who, has all the wisdom and confidence and all of this, but is extremely humble and listens. I never hear him laying down the law. Actually, he allows people to make mistakes. Sometimes I used to ask him, I said, how far would you let someone go before you would intervene? Because I thought, how can you do that, to just allow something? It might harm them, but it might also harm Sam Yiling, and I can see they're making mistakes, and how can you refrain from just sort of saying, and he wouldn't. And how did he answer that question? I think it would have to be something really very, very serious before he would step in a kind of make it sort of intrude on the situation. He would see it as an intrusion. He would let people make mistakes and learn from them. Of course, he knew when to do that and when not to do that. But what he's saying, one should not take the attitude, I know all the answers for you. I know what I'm talking about, and I'm advising you, and this is what you should do. That is not going to cut the mustard. If anything, it's just going to get people's backs up, or make them even more afraid or unable to take responsibility for themselves. So he's saying what frightened people need, because you remember a lot of when people are aggressive, it's coming from fear. Remember? So what frightened people need is comfort, kind words, gentleness, not laying down the law, saying, no, you're doing it all wrong, this is the way you should do it. That's not going to help. So kind words, gentle words. So try not to be very forceful. Look, it's terrible how you're living like a pig. Some people might make others more frightened that way, and that's not wise. Even if a person does live like a pig, what's wrong if they're happy living like a pig? You have to accept that person's way of life. You have to accept that you are not the giver of all the answers. You are just willing to listen to whatever difficulties they have, if they wish to share their experiences. First, you have to become a friend, particularly in the sense of someone who is willing to listen, willing to understand whatever difficulties experienced. Patience is very important. And one should not make immediate decisions. It might take many days, many years even. So patience is really, really important. You can't solve everything like that. And, gentleness and patience. And I saw the way Rinpoche was with people. That's not to say he couldn't be wrathful if that was what was required. Very, very rarely, but I did see that side as well occasionally if that was what was going to help. But generally speaking, he would not interfere. He would maybe ask someone to do something like go and do something in the garden, and that would be very, very useful for them. But he didn't say, I think you should work in the garden, that would really help your mental state. He didn't spell it out like that. He'd just given them a job to do that involved being in the garden, And then they'd be quite happy in that space. So things like that, very skillful. He's so skillful. But one of his main qualities is that he would listen, fully listen. And I remember one time a journalist came to interview him, and because we worked in the same place, I would be present when things like that were going on. And she asked him, how did he treat patients? Because she knew he was a doctor of Tibetan medicine, and he said, well, mainly I listen. She wanted some big scientific or kind of exotic kind of, well, you have to get this and you have to do that. And he said, listen. If you want to help yourselves, and practicing the mind training is the best way, rather than trying to go around helping the whole world. Start with yourself by practicing mind training rather than trying to go around telling everyone else what to do. There is I remember also Rinpoche telling me of this sort of metaphor or something. You know, if you want to have a smooth path in the world, you know, if you want to make your life smooth, you don't have to go around and sort of pave the whole world with leather. You know, you have to cover the whole world with leather to make your path smooth. What you need to do is put some leather shoes on. So it's like you have to start with yourself. You can't do the whole world without. If you have the leather on your feet, then wherever you go will be smooth. You don't need to do the whole world. Anyway, I thought it stuck in my mind. I could see the sense of that saying. Yeah, it's as if you have a seed, and when what you need is a strong tree, you need unlimited compassion. This is where we're going with it. So we all have the seed of compassion, but we need unlimited compassion. We say this in the opening prayers, don't we? Impartial, universal compassion. Not just a titchy little bit of compassion, but limitless compassion. So once you develop the tree of unlimited compassion, then everything you do is helpful. Whether you have the time or not, all your actions will be helpful. So until you develop that kind of wisdom, I think that direct help is not always a good thing to do. Whatever time you have, put it into practice instead. So learn, you know, deal with your mind first. And then he comes to a situation in life which everybody probably, most people will come to meet, and he's talking about caring for our parents. So a real life situation that, you know, we all of us come to at one point or another. And he's talking about in the West, because you know, and he's lived in the West since he was a young man, but of course his formative years were in Tibet. In the West, we've changed certain things because nobody here can make you take care of your parents. It's not like it's particularly a thing anymore. I think this is a big mistake. If you really want to be a Buddhist, the first thing I want you to do to change is this way of thinking. And this is something simple to do. Serve your parents, take care of your parents. Don't send them to an old people's home. Don't send them to institutions. That's not the place where your parents should end. If everybody gave up being monks and nuns and gave up living in Dharma centres, I would be very happy if it meant they were taking care of their parents very nicely and kindly, and with love and kindness. I would be much happier than if you put your parents in an old people's home and then come to a Dharma centre to live. In that case, I don't think you're doing the right thing. So there's a very concrete example, isn't it? And think, you know, I mean, I didn't really get the chance to look after my parents because they died before they didn't particularly get they reached an old age. Well, my father did, but he kind of was in a good situation, so he never ever went into an old people's home or anything like that. He was quite healthy and then he wasn't. Sort of. And my mother, they both died fairly suddenly, of natural causes, but fairly suddenly. And I was young, you know, so I didn't really come to that apart from a very short period of time. But it's very telling what he's saying about, you know, of course he likes it if people are practicing Buddhists in the centre, or monks and nuns, he's even being specific. But if you had to choose between that and looking after your parents, he'd say, look after your parents. That's putting Buddhism into practice. That's developing all the good qualities of Buddhism that we're supposed to be doing, and that's one way of doing it. Otherwise, it's kind of not very realistic. What is the real meaning of compassion and kindness? Compassion is something from which you are not expecting a result. Compassion is deep and sincere and from the heart. Compassion means that I hope through my prayer and through my actions and through whatever knowledge I have to offer that I can share the merit to bring benefit to others. With compassion, you have no expectation of others. It's not, oh, I'll do this if you do that. It's not a transaction. You do not think, I have done this thing for them, now they have to do something for me. Because it's based entirely on your wish to serve and look after others with no expectation of anything in return. Such as an improvement to your reputation. This is quite, people, if they do a good deed, they want to be recognized for it, or we like to be recognized for it, or have some kind of an award, or, this is what the award system, reward, or whatever. Whether it's to be treated well in kind, well, I did this for them, so they should do something nice for me. Or it could be money, it could be a medal, it could be an Oscar, it could be whatever. We do something we want to reward, don't we? Or a good reputation. People will think well of me if I give to charity, so I'll give it and I'll make sure everybody knows about it. Of course it's still good to give to whatever good cause, but of course it becomes a bit tainted by a selfish wish. It's not, there may be some goodness in it, but it's still tainted by a selfish kind of motivation, or wanting some result from it for yourself. So if you are offering prayers of compassion for somebody and that person tortures you, you still have the same compassion. That's not easy, is it? It's putting it in a very, very extreme situation. And there are many stories of, I'm thinking of Guru Rinpoche and his students often, there are stories about them acting this out and not reacting in a negative way. Or of course the Buddha. He, in the Jataka tales, there's many, many stories about his compassion. Real compassion is limitless. But in the beginning, you have to practice in a small way. You can pray, may I have a little compassion, and may it be compassion with understanding. It comes from understanding, and it's wisdom and compassion together. And the key to compassion is non-expectation. It's pure compassion, without any kind of expectation. And it's not limited to any people. Compassion and kindness apply to animals and any form of existence, whether they have a form or no form. One needs to have constant practice, share the merit, and give spiritual happiness to beings, and wish that they may be free from suffering and from creating the causes of suffering. This is what we say, isn't it? But it's not enough to just say it. It's a routine that we do at the beginning or the end, We really need to take it on board, and everyone, when we do say it, really mean it, And you don't focus all your compassionate energy on one person, because that's just clinging. That's attachment. Compassion and kindness are based on non-attachment and non-clinging. He also just say at some point, that it's not a good idea to. Where did I see that? Oh yeah, if you want to help others, there's another thing you should remember: don't fall in love with them. Loving kindness does not mean you have to fall in love with that person. As soon as you start falling in love, you are no longer helpful. If you really want to help somebody, you must have space between you and that person. Just be willing to listen. You have no vested interest in it. You can be impartial. It's not saying you shouldn't help someone that you do love, that you already love, but you don't have to fall in love with someone in order to help them. Of course, you still help loved ones, but try to even, with that, be very impartial, very compassionate, but very impartial. That's not easy. I do remember asking Rinpoche upon this point when I was very new at Samye, and I was somewhat exercised by this idea of total impartiality. Like, how can you develop complete impartiality? And I asked him, what would you do, Rinpoche, if you were in a lifeboat, being saved, from some, like say the Titanic or something. You're in a lifeboat, and there were still some people who weren't yet in the lifeboat, but there was only room for one. And one of the people that you could see who was wanting to get in the lifeboat was your wife. And the other one you didn't know what kind of person they were. They were just somebody else. I said, who would you choose to save? I think he said, whichever one was going to be the most useful and helpful to the world. And then I followed it up with another question. Well, how would you know if you didn't know the other person? Anyway, but yeah, there's no real answer to that. But that's the way I would think. I still do to some extent. Awkward. Because you would have to be, you couldn't know. You would think you would just have to leave it to karma of whatever happened. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, and I didn't get that clear of an answer from Rinpoche. Sorry, Rinpoche. He says she's still wittering on about that. Oh dear. But anyway. The point is to develop, as far as you're able, as much impartiality as you can, because the people that you might think are least deserving probably need it more. If you look at people that are somebody, okay, well, I'm not going to bring present-day politicians into the equation, but let's go back into the past and say someone like Adolf Hitler. It's very hard to drum up compassion for someone like Adolf Hitler. But then if you think of what he might be almost certainly experiencing because of doing so many negative actions, that I would pretty much imagine he would be a #1 candidate for the hell realms, and that goes on for many, many years. So that's really not in our remit. We don't have to worry about that. But it's just to show you that people who are so confused that they would do such terrible things do need our compassion, and that's really the only answer. Because otherwise, you're going to come at them with hatred, which is what they deal in. How is that going to help anything? Certainly not going to help you. And it won't help them, so it doesn't really help anybody. It's not saying you should allow, them to go around murdering people if you can help them not do that, and that would help them as well as their victims. So, but we have to have a very broad view here, not just the first reaction, but really, as he said, take your time to think things through. Don't react out of similar kind of negativity. Anyway, if you have great compassion, then all your actions will be compassionate. You don't have to think, now I have to do a compassionate action. Oh, this is not a compassionate action. It's automatic. You have the seed has grown, the actions are the fruit of that. Whatever actions will be a result of that way of being, that way of thinking and being. So it's inevitable. A truly compassionate person does not have any negative actions because the action is a product of the compassion. So it doesn't go. You can't. It's. If you have compassion, if you're truly compassionate, then your actions automatically follow suit. It's not like I've got an extra thing on. The actions arise out of the compassion, isn't it? So then the actions will be compassionate. So that's basically what this chapter's about. I think I'd just like to say this thing at the end. If you work to make yourself a better person, and if each of us works to improve ourselves, then the world will be a better place. I love the simplicity of the way Rinpoche expresses himself, but that's the truth of the matter. That's what it all comes down to. If we put in the effort to cultivate our good qualities and relinquish whatever confused and misunderstood things and negativity that we've had, we do that through understanding. You can't just say, right, I don't like that, I'll put it. You have to understand what's going on in your mind, and then with that understanding is a release from whatever was the wrong thinking. When we've understood something, you've understood it automatically. You've opened up. You drop that, but you need to train in it because our negative actions and thoughts are quite habituated, maybe over many, many lifetimes. So it's not like you suddenly think, oh yeah, right, and then everything, boom, it's all because the habit comes back again and again, and you have to keep trying with it. It's like pulling out weeds; they come back. So you have to keep weeding, and then eventually. No more weeds. Or the weeds have become something different. They become wanted, something that is needed and useful, not obstacles. So we I don't know if transform is the right word, because that suggests you do something other. I think it's more cultivating what you already have, and letting go of what you don't need, what is not helpful, what is causing obstacles in your life. So both are within our control if we take it, we take responsibility, and we can become that person. Everything is subject to change, so if you direct it in a purposeful, meaningful way, then the results will be according to that. You're not just randomly floating on the winds of change, and being tossed here and there. You've actually taken responsibility, seen what needs to be done, and start being it, start doing it, start being it, rather than it just remaining theoretical. And it can start with very small things, Just start small and gradually build up, but the main thing he's stressing is to train the mind, because that's where any actions originate. So it's the mind that you need to train, and it's through looking at it, through meditating, through taking responsibility for your actions. So that's what he says. So I think we'll just meditate on that. You just sit up, get into a good posture. So he said, if you work to make yourself a better person, and if each of us works to improve ourselves, then the world will be a better place. And then I'm going to go right back to the very beginning. Whatever obstacles arise, if you deal with them through kindness and without trying to escape them, then you have real freedom. So just allow your mind to settle. Body in a good posture. Place your mind. You can follow your breath, if you like, as a way of helping your mind to settle. You know what to do. Whatever obstacles arise, if you deal with them through kindness, without trying to escape, then you have real freedom. So because we film these sessions, I feel like we can't really go on too long with the meditation, but it's always a bit of a wrench to stop in a way. But I hope you'll continue to do that practice at home. And when you're thinking of it, the chapter is called Kindness as a Way of Life. So if you have that sort of branded, in your heart, your mind, kindness as a way of life, and think, in your own situation, make it real for yourself. Think of like when somebody does something kind for you, how you feel, the difference that makes to your day. It could be a small thing, and also how, if you do something kind, how that makes you feel. It's a win-win, isn't it? You do something kind, you generally feel nice about it, That's fine. You shouldn't feel bad about it, So why not? It's a win-win. And of course the opposite is equally true. Somebody does something unkind, or you do something unkind, it doesn't make you feel good. So if you want to feel good, be kind. Actually, a really lovely thing happened to me a couple of nights ago. I was leaving here and it was quite late at night, and it's always a bit of a rush to get to the bus because there's half an hour if I don't get it, and it was really cold. Anyway, I thought I left in time, and I was walking up the street and I saw the bus, and it was still, I had to come around the corner, but it was quite a long way to the bus stop. So I just started running. And eventually the bus came quite quickly, and then it sort of was, I thought, oh no, it's going to go past, and then by the time I get there, so I kind of put a bit more speed on, and the bus, it just drew up alongside me, not at the bus stop, stopped, opened the doors, and I got on. I was like, and I just said, you are a very kind gentleman. He just smiled, and I sat there, because that is very rare. And he actually possibly, he wasn't supposed, strictly speaking, he was probably not supposed to do that, stop it around. I'm sure he would have made sure that nobody was in danger, but then he did the kind thing, and now I'm telling you about it because I was so impressed. It made my day, it made my night, because, I really didn't want to wait half an hour in the cold for a bus. So yeah, little acts of kindness can really put a smile on your face and for others. So yeah, take it into your life in that way, and realistically, not just only, of course you have to start with your mind, but when you're met with that situation, he chose to do the kind thing. He could have just sailed past. Maybe he would have waited at the bus stop, maybe not, but I've never had someone actually stop the bus for me, which had quite a few people on it. Anyway, I'll share that little story with you. Okay, let's say dedicate the merit of our practice. And really with feeling, we dedicate it for all sentient beings. So we'll say it in English first. Through the wholesomeness of this practice, may all mental defilements be overcome, and may all beings be liberated from the ocean of samsara, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. O sonam de tamche sekpani, tokne nipe danam pamchene, jigana chi baladrukpai, sepe sole doa sho. So thank you, and well, we're going to be having a break soon, so because it's coming up with the Christmas and winter holidays, so there won't be another session in this series in this term. But if you wish, if the demand is there, and I only know if the demand is there if you let me know, and if if you remember to book, then I would like to carry on with it. I don't know if you would like. I think it's important to bring Rinpoche's wisdom and legacy to life, you know. And as he said, don't just leave it in the centre. Take it with you. You know? Take it with you. That's the most important thing. Okay. See you next time.